Hi, I'm Jackie. Thanks for joining me for this short video on how to find pelvic neutral. Before you even ask what pelvic neutral is, you might say, why do we need it? But pelvic neutral is a very important part of being in your body, especially if you're moving your body or even just sitting still. It helps to engage all of your core muscles. And by that, today I'm going to talk about the transverse abdominis, your lower abdominal wall, your external obliques that come from the back and around to the front, and then in deep core in your pelvic floor area. When you can find pelvic neutral, one, it's a very safe and stable place for your body to be in. It helps to support your lower back, also to support the front of the body. It helps to support the organs, and for the most part in our yoga postures or when we're sitting in a chair, walking, hiking, running, if you can find it. It's a little harder when you're more active, but it brings an awareness to our core muscles and helps us be stable. To find pelvic neutral, you'll want to practice it on the floor, in a seated position, in table position, and standing. And then practice it when you move to just see how much of it can you find while you're moving. To get started, you'll need a space on the floor. I invite you to come down onto your back. And if you need to put something underneath your head, feel free to do that. And keep your knees bent as you find your pelvic floor. I'm going to move this hand away, but you can leave it on the floor so that you'll be able to see. So we can come into what's called a posterior tilt, exhaling and pressing our lower back down to the floor. And you might feel a lengthening of your spine, a lengthening of the muscles around the spine. When you do this, you want to try not to squeeze your glutes. And then when you inhale, you go in the opposite direction. You create a small space at your lower back. You can maybe send a couple of pencils under there. So it's not super big. The pubic bone is moving away. You're coming into an anterior tilt. So you might go back and forth. We call this pelvic rocking. And when you find your pelvic neutral, and it is different for everybody, you're going to find the place where you're not pushing down into the floor. You're not lifting up and away from the floor, but you're somewhere in between. And when you find the in between, you will notice a slight sense of bracing around your lower abdominal area. So you just rock back and forth a few times. And then you make that rocking go smaller and smaller until you find that place where, not quite on the floor, not quite away from the floor, but I feel this bracing. Now, another way to discover the bracing is by coughing. When you cough, you exhale the air, the belly pulls in, and you should feel a tightening across this lower belly band. So give that a try, a couple of coughs. And then when you find that bracing, then you want to hold that bracing there. And this is your pelvic neutral. From here, you can do all kinds of things, all kinds of movements. And yes, sometimes you'll put your lower back to the floor and sometimes you'll be farther away. But when you come into your yoga postures, you want to try and find this pelvic neutral position. Once you've discovered it here, then you can play with finding it. I like to go to a table position second. So table position, hands and knees, fingers spread wide. It's the same movement. Lower the belly, reach the belly up. You're primarily working here with that lumbar spine, sacrum, and the coccyx. The abs pull in just a little bit, and then you'll continue to make that movement smaller and smaller until you find that bracing. So you're not dipping way down to the floor. You're not reaching way up, but it's a place in between, somewhere where your body feels secure. You feel engagement in the abdominal wall. And you just can hold here and breathe and feel those abdominal muscles working. And then from here, you can do some of your yoga movements, continuing to pay attention to that pelvic floor. From table, you might turn to sitting. In a sitting position, you'll do that same rocking back and forth of the pelvis. And then you make that rock smaller and smaller. And what you should find here when you find that pelvic neutral is you're really sitting up on your sits bones, on your ischial tuberosities at the base of the pelvis. And you'll just kind of hold here. You'll find that bracing. You can do that cough here to notice that engagement, and then reach up through the crown of the head. It's a very secure feeling to find pelvic neutral. And then the last place that you'll look for it is when you're standing. And when you do it standing, you'll want to keep your knees a little bent. And it's great to practice pelvic neutral standing when you're in the grocery line or when you're having to stand to get into some place. So give those a try. Find pelvic neutral. During the course of your day, every once in a while, see if you can find pelvic neutral. It may help you to stand taller, sit taller, be more secure in your body. Thanks for joining me.